The Denver Broncos are in a win and in situation in Week 18, but a couple of Carsons for the Kansas City Chiefs are going to try to steal their playoff hopes. We're breaking it down on a crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Absolutely everything is at stake for the Denver Broncos in Week 18, and absolutely nothing is at stake for the Kansas City Chiefs, where Patrick Mahomes is comfortable enough he might even get to go watch his kid be born in Week 18. But I'm here, as always, crossover Thursday edition, Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs. Sayre Bedinger, co-host of Locked on Broncos over there, along with Chris Clark, who we get to do a couple of these every single year. So welcome in all of you from Chiefs Kingdom. And thank you so much for welcoming me in as well. Chris, this is going to be an exciting game, but I think we've got to say thank you and Happy New Year to all of the listeners. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day every single day. And you know that every week here on Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs, we got a special crossover Thursday for you. And you know what? This might not be the last crossover between you and I, Chris, as we get into Week 18. It's going to be one of those situations where the Broncos absolutely backs against the wall, desperation mode against the Kansas City Chiefs, who they will not be playing a lot of their prominent players in this game. I want to throw it to you here and break down some of these key storylines, because obviously the Chiefs, they've locked up the number one seed in the AFC. Going to be an interesting looking crew out there for them this weekend.
Yeah, and this might not be our only. I mean, this might not be the last crossover that you and I do together this year, possibly. I mean, we may end up having a third one coming up in the coming weeks. We'll have to see how that goes. The Denver Broncos are looking to be in the number 7 seed in the playoffs. Obviously, they'd be facing the Buffalo Bills. If that happens, that would be a very tall task, but that's why you play the game. So we'll see how that goes. When you look at this Chiefs team, you're right. I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to play. Travis Kelce likely not going to play. Chris Jones not playing, but he's more injury, I think, than just him not playing, although I don't think he play anyway. George Karlaftis, Isaiah Pacheco. I would imagine Kareem Hunt doesn't play much, because I just can't imagine that they want to give him snaps after everything he went through this year. And Trent McDuffie, obviously, is probably another guy that won't play. So a lot of guys that aren't going to play for Kansas City, which makes a ton of sense. So that kind of changes the dynamic of what you want to see here. But Ryan and I kind of talked about this earlier this week. And the big thing for me is get some of these young guys and just have them go out there and play. Like, make it as simple as you can for some of them. You don't have to show anything. And maybe in some regards, you don't want to show anything, because you could end up facing the Denver Broncos in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Yeah, it would be 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks after this game. So, we'll see how that turns out. But this is going to be an interesting matchup, and you get to learn from Kansas City's perspective. You're going to get to learn a lot about the younger guys and kind of what they have behind it. And this is a good Broncos team to have them going up against.
Yeah, it is. And the Broncos, they have won 9 games this year, which is the most that they've won since Super Bowl 50. Obviously, it's tied for the most. They won 9 games back in 2016. They just narrowly missed the playoffs with the Trevor Siemian leading the charge and Gary Kubiak still as the head coach of the team. But before we go any further, Chris, I want to let all the listeners know today's episode, Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs, is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. And you can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And as far as PrizePicks goes, Chris, there could be a lot of unrecognizable names out there if you want to kind of go with the over-under situations for the players that are out there. So it could be kind of a fun weekend for the bettors. But absolutely, you're right. I mean, it's going to look a lot different for what Cody and I have been talking about, what we've been talking about in the group chats and things like that, as far as everybody in Broncos country is so nervous that this team is going to screw it up. I've kind of compared this situation to a technical free throw for the Denver Broncos. And obviously your best free throw shooter might be a 90 94% shooter, something like that, 90% or more, but the guy's still got to go out there and make the shot, right? There may not be anybody standing there. There may not be anything really preventing him from, getting that, or you could liken it even to a fast break layup, however you want to put it. As far as not showing anything for the Chiefs, do you think that extends to the defense as well? Because Steve Spagnuolo has a very specific brand of football that he plays. How are they going to attack this Denver Broncos offense after earlier this season we saw, a really tight battle between these two teams when both were playing all of their starters?
So I do think I agree with you. And I think the big thing, and one thing that I didn't mention earlier, and one thing that I think really plays into this and will play in for the Broncos more so than the Chiefs, is the Chiefs have nothing to lose in this game. So they're going to be loose. They're going to be flying around. They're going to try to be doing anything that they can. And they're going to have their young guys out there who are trying to make a point of why they should be getting more playing time. But the other side of this for me is Denver is going to be under pressure. You're right. 95% of the time they should win this game and it shouldn't be close. And because of who is going to be playing. And now you're going to be looking at a situation where Denver has everything on the line, and that changes things. Now, is it going to be something that they can't overcome? No, I'm not saying that, but it does change how they're going to play. And the other thing that it does is, regardless of how this game turns out, which I will say, I'll just say now, I expect Denver to win based on all the stuff that we've already talked about and what we're going to talk about. But regardless of how this turns out, it's absolutely something Denver needs, regardless, win or lose. They need the pressure. They need the experience is the big thing. Regular season games are great, but when you're trying to fight for the playoffs, stakes go up a little bit and the speed is going to get faster and the pressure is going to be more because you know what's on the line.
So in terms of Kansas City's side of things, what young players are you looking at stepping up in this game? Because obviously right now we're not 100% sure like who all is or isn't going to play a lot of snaps, but there's only so many guys that can play. I don't know in this sort of instance, Chris, I don't even know what the NFL's rules are in terms of, can you elevate a bunch of guys off the practice squad if they still have eligibility? Nope. Or is it just the two guys, or, however it may be? I'm interested to find out who you think in terms of young players for this Kansas City team you're kind of watching out for to make that statement that you talked about, like, hey, I deserve some more playing time.
Yeah, and there's been a couple that have already gotten some playing time, but you can only elevate two players from the practice squad. And if you put somebody on injured reserve, they're out for 4 games. So that's not really going to be an option either, unless somebody is out for basically the remainder of the playoffs at this point anyway. So, and I'm really going to be curious. I'm really curious, and that's a rule that I'd be interested in looking into, because Kansas City gets the break. Does that bye week count as a game? If you think about it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Because to me, it's not fair. It wouldn't be fair to say that doesn't count as a game if you're looking at it from that perspective. I don't think Kansas City has any players that's going to affect, but it's an interesting rule issue that I would be curious about. But you can only bring up 2 guys, and they're already going to have to bring up Chris Odokan, I'm sorry, because they need a third quarterback, or he's going to be their second quarterback that game. And I'm guessing Mahomes will be the emergency third. And I would say even if the first 2 get injured, you have to try to put somebody else in. You don't want Mahomes out there, but so you're in a situation where you can only bring up one young guy. And so are you going to be looking at doing some things differently? And the bigger question, and something that Ryan and I talked about that I'm curious about, is how are they going to play their offensive and defensive lines? Because offensive linemen don't like to miss games. So do the offensive linemen that have been playing want to play? Is a guy like DJ Humphries going to play even though, this game doesn't mean anything and he's been injured because he needs snaps? Is that something they're going to look at doing? Is Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith going to play? Or are you going to put the backups in there? You look at the young guys. I would love to see some of Ethan Driscoll and, they're young guards. But the question is are you going to put them in a situation where they have to protect Carson Wentz? And does the offensive line want to play? Does the defensive line want to play? Christian Roland Wallace has gotten a ton of snaps, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him go up against the Denver starters as one of the starters at the corner position. And then Jaden Hicks is another one to throw out there. He's been a young guy that I think will get a lot of snaps at safety.
Great opportunities on both sides of the ball for both teams. Young players on either roster. Really, the Broncos do have the third youngest roster in the NFL. So regardless of who they're going up against situationally, as Chris mentioned, the stakes are high, the pressure is on, and these guys are going to get a chance to prove themselves. And we're going to break down some of the key storylines on Denver's side of things, including whether or not this defense can find a way to actually bounce back. 4 games in a row for the Denver defense, not looking like itself. We're going to talk about that and more coming up next on this crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. And you know what? If you love live experiences, live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy, some of my favorite memories are attending comedy events and sports events over the last couple of years, where the energy and the excitement, it's just unforgettable. And now Gametime is making it even easier for you to get tickets to watch your favorite events, whether it is comedy, sports, or whatever it may be. And their new feature, Gametime Picks, it's going to filter out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of tickets. You can use the Gametime app, and with Gametime Picks, you can find amazing deals and even see the view from your seat before you purchase. The super deal, it's particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. The Denver Broncos defense needs to bounce back in a significant way, and the offense needs to limit mistakes and find a way to pull through in a pressure-packed situation. We're going to break down some key storylines from Denver's side of things on this crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Chiefs, and this crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. As always, want to say thank you to every single one of you that makes Locked on Broncos and Locked on Chiefs your first listen of the day. Every single day, we really appreciate every single one of you for rocking with us. You know, your boys Cody and Sayre will have you over there Locked on Broncos, and Chris and Ryan got you covered Locked on Chiefs all year round. And hopefully, Chris, for both of us, and I don't know that necessarily you guys really care about the Broncos making the playoffs, but hopefully from our side of things, both of these teams will be in the NFL postseason here. I don't know that anybody really wants the Cincinnati Bengals backing their way in. That'd be kind of interesting from the rest of the NFL's perspective, or from the entertainment perspective. But from Denver's side of things in this, you mentioned it before, the pressure is on. And I think that's the most important thing that we're looking at here from the Broncos' vantage point. Can this team bounce back after 2 straight losses? Now, throughout the course of the season, we've seen Denver do exactly that. They lose a game or two. They come back. Specifically, we can go back to the last game against Kansas City, where they were in Kansas City. You lose an absolute heartbreaker in the worst possible fashion. You and I haven't even got a chance to chat about that since that happened. That was devastating. But then the Broncos ripped off 4 straight wins right after that game. So this team does have some mental fortitude, but can they do it against a lot of guys that they've probably not got any film on this season?
You know, it's funny because had Denver won that game, and obviously things go differently throughout the season, regardless, but had Denver won that game, this game matters to Kansas City, and they can't rest their starters. They're playing everybody, because then they have to worry about the Buffalo Bills getting the number 1 seed, because at that point they'd be 14-2. So, that loss changed everything for Kansas City. And heartbreaking is one way to put it. I mean, obviously I figured they lost. Like I literally was watching that game. I was getting ready to come downstairs to record the the post game. And I'm like, okay, well, they lost because chip shot field goal. And obviously that happens. I mean, in Kansas City, it's had some weird things this year. They block a kick. They had 3 different kickers kick a game-winning field goal for them. I 100% agree with you. I don't want to see the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. But I know Cincy fans will say that I'm hating on them for that, but it is what it is. I think it would be good for the AFC West, though, for the Chargers, who are already in the playoffs, the Chiefs that are in the playoffs, and the Broncos to make the playoffs. I think that's great for the AFC West to have 3 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'll have to go back and check the receipts on this. I know we did our AFC West preview at the beginning of the season. I think a couple of us in that AFC West preview kind of talked about the fact that, man, maybe 3 teams in this division could be really good this year. And it's turned out to be the case. I mean, 3 teams with 9+ victories, 3 teams with winning records. That's the AFC West ain't getting talked about too much as the best division in football. Thankfully, there's the NFC North takes the pressure off in a way there. But man, it's kind of funny to see how these teams have bounced back after. Remember, just a couple of years ago, it was, oh well, Russell Wilson and Derek Carr are joining, or the Russell Wilson's joining the AFC West. You got all these, head coach quarterback combos. Everything could be awesome, and it's just completely shifted as teams have rebuilt. The Chargers getting Jim Harbaugh, and now Denver having Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and the Raiders just kind of drifting into anonymity at this point, which is fine by us over here at our respective shows. But
us too.
Yeah, it's good. So we talked about the defense hopefully returning to form. They've been absolutely terrible the last 4 weeks, and it's been a lot of either busted coverage or, you go up against Cincinnati last week, Chris, and obviously that's one of the best passing attacks in the NFL. So not a whole lot you can do about that. They're going to get theirs. It's just kind of, can you outscore them? Can you outlast them? That's been the story of their season thus far. Offensively for the Denver Broncos, I think one of the biggest storylines to look for here against the Chiefs is, can you limit mistakes and can you find a way to extend drives? That's going to be crucial because the Broncos have been very much hit or miss on third down, a lot more miss than hit. Obviously, that's kind of to be expected when, number one, you don't run the ball well, and number two, you've got a rookie quarterback out there.
Yeah, and I think, not to take away from what this game means or what this game is, but I think the other big thing for me is Denver needs this type of game just to be in it and to get the experience. And I know I kind of said that when it comes to the pressure, but it also is the experience level of a playoff level atmosphere, which is what this is going to be. And Denver has a lot of young players, or a lot of players that have been in Denver for years and never really experienced this. So this is going to be completely new to them. So regardless of how this turns out, whether or not they make the playoffs, which I think that they probably will, and whether or not they actually get a win in the playoffs, it's a win for Denver because you're getting that experience to move up to the next level, and players are going to start to understand what that's going to take.
And a lot of these guys have been in games with some stakes. I mean, we could go back to last year where they played in Houston and they had an opportunity to really make a case for the postseason. And you go 0 for 13 on third downs. You throw an interception in the end zone to lose the game. Then you had a situation even against the New England Patriots last year on Christmas Eve, you blow that game against Bailey Zappi, which has a lot of Broncos fans having nightmares right now about facing another backup quarterback this coming week. And I think that now you look at this team with 2 straight games against the Chargers. You had an 11-point lead in the second half. You blew it. You had an opportunity to go for 2 at the end of regulation against the Bengals. You didn't take it. You got to overtime, but then in overtime, you blew it. You had 2 possessions in overtime. Yeah. Couldn't even get a first down. So you're right. This Broncos team being in these spots, like there's guys like Cortland Sutton and Garrett Bowles who have really not ever experienced throughout their NFL careers, been in the league since 2017, 2018. They've never experienced these things. Then you've got the young guys who are none the wiser, having never been in these situations at all. And then you've got some of the other veterans they've brought in, like Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, players who have been in these types of big games. It should make for a very interesting sort of melding pot as you go, into this final week with everything on the line in Kansas City kind of playing with house money.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not forget, not only did they get the ball twice, but they got a blessing because the Bengals kicker missed a field goal. I mean, you get a field goal blocked against Kansas City, and then later on you have a Bengals kicker hit the upright, which would have sealed them being in the playoffs a week before, and then it would have really changed how this game would have to play probably. So, you look at this, and I think it's going to be intriguing from the Broncos' perspective because you're right, they have to win, but they also have to do it in a way that is smart. They don't want to show everything. They have to win, and if they have to pull more stuff out, they have to pull more stuff out. But you want to hold stuff back for the playoffs if you can. So it's going to be a give and take on both sides. I mean, Kansas City, I think, is going to come out and play very vanilla, and they're going to try to see what they got in their young guys. And you made a great point earlier. Denver's going to be coming in and not knowing what some of these young guys can do. That's a problem too, because you don't know exactly how you're going to be facing, one, and how you're going to be facing this Chiefs offense and defense.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out in Week 18. The Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs taking each other on at 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time. Chris and I are both on Central Time, which I believe is the correct time zone here. But wherever you're at, Broncos Country or Chiefs Kingdom, we're going to look forward to some keys to victory in this game. It doesn't really matter for Kansas City. It really matters for Denver. But regardless, we're going to bring some keys for both of these teams to get a W in Week 18. Coming up next, Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Chiefs. Crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs, they are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel, so many different ways for you to pick up a W. You may love betting on which player will score a touchdown. And this weekend, I mean, it's a free-for-all in terms of you look at the Broncos and the Chiefs rosters, so many different players that you can pick to be first scorers or anytime scorers in this game. But you can also predict how many points will each team score in the game. A lot of things available over at FanDuel. All you got to do, visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. As we jump into the fourth quarter of Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Chiefs, once again, want to say thank you to every single one of you that makes us your first listen of the day every single day. And if you haven't already done so, hit subscribe wherever you listen. Keys to victory for the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 18. Chris, I'm going to throw it to you. First of all, tell us if winning really even matters for the Chiefs at this point. And we know there's no stakes, but what do they got to do in this game, regardless if it's keys to victory or just keys in general? What do you want to see? 3 things for the Chiefs in this game in Week 18.
Take care of the ball, number 1, play physical football, number 2, and really just, show what you have as a young guy. Go out and throw your body around, try to make plays, show, do your assignments as you are supposed to do them. And, maybe you can find a way to get a victory against the Broncos. You're right, it doesn't matter, but you're never going to try to lose the game either. So, I mean, that's a big thing. And you don't want to have that attitude of going in of, oh, we're going to lose. They're going to be trying to win this game. Now, does it mean that they're going to pull out trick plays or they're going to do things or they're going to use players that would essentially get them to a victory? No, I don't think so. I think that they're just going to try to play their game plan that they have in place. If you take care of the ball and you get turnovers, that's the other thing. And when we talked about offense, it's you don't know who the offensive players you're going to be going up against, but you also don't know the defensive players you're going to be going up against, what their tendencies are, what you can beat them with, what they like to do in certain situations. So you could see a situation where maybe Nick thinks something's going to be open and a young guy is just looking for something specifically and says, okay, I can go get the ball. And maybe turnovers change this game completely. You get down, 2-3 turnovers in a game like this. It doesn't matter if you're playing a bunch of starters versus a bunch of backups. NFL is the NFL. Anybody can win on any given Sunday, especially if you give them the right opportunities.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I think a lot of Broncos fans are worried about going into this game is, well, yeah, sure, you're playing backups for Kansas City, but at the same time, those guys still get paid to play, and you're going to have to bring your best, which leads me to 3 keys to victory for the Denver Broncos in Week 18 here. Number 1, you got to force those turnovers. Don't be the one turning the ball over. Force those turnovers and give that young offense extra possessions. That's going to be huge in a game like this to increase your margin for error. Number 2, win the field position and time of possession battle. If you do struggle offensively, make sure that you are at least getting a couple of first downs every drive and that you're able to pin the Chiefs deep to lengthen the field for them and create the at least the illusion that it's going to take longer to get to the end zone for that offense. And it plays into the strength of your defense as well to be able to do that. And then number 3, easier said than done. Put this game away early. Convert on your opportunities that you get. If you are able to march the ball down the field, don't be missing opportunities on 3rd and short from inside the 20. Make sure you are scoring touchdowns early and often this game. Put the Chiefs in as big of a hole as you possibly can early on to once again increase that margin for error throughout the game. It's all about how you start. And the Denver Broncos have had a number of games this year. They've won 9 games, Chris. 8 of those 9 victories for the Denver Broncos has been by 9 or more points. They've only won 1 game by 1 score. It was against the New York Jets earlier this season. Every other game that they've won has been of blowout fashion. And so I think that's what you want to do, is replicate the formula that you had in those other games where you won by 2 or more scores.
And it's funny because the Chiefs are almost the exact opposite. Just about every single game they've won this year has been close and been a 1-score game at the very end of the game. So it's a lot different. And I agree with you. I think that the Broncos need to look at this game and they need to try to put it away early, because the last thing, while I think the Chiefs are going to try to win, I don't expect, if they get down 2 or 3 scores, that Andy Reid is going to say, we got to try to win this game, and they're going to put Carson Wentz in there and have him, throw the ball 45, 50 times a game in the game. I think they're going to look at it and say, okay, maybe we're not going to win this game, but we're going to still try to run the ball a little bit. We're going to try to pass the ball. We're going to try to do some things, but maybe winning isn't going to be something that we can do. So we're not going to drop him back, especially with maybe a potential backup offensive line, and who knows who's going to be out there as your wide receivers or tight ends. So I don't think if the Broncos get up early, I don't see the Chiefs really trying to force their way back into the game, because as we've said the entire time, this game doesn't matter for Kansas City. It's more of, can we show what we need to? Can we get some of our guys experience? Because while it's not a huge pressure situation for the Chiefs, some of these guys are going to feel pressure because this is their first opportunity to really get extended playing time in the NFL, and they want to show what they can do, and they want to get experience and get ready for if they are called on in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's where the Broncos starters doing their job is going to be absolutely essential. Do your job out there and make sure that you do not make a bunch of mistakes. No unforced errors, none of this, 15-yard penalties, bailing other teams out on 3rd and late. That's what they've been doing a lot in this streak of games right now, where they've been tight with the Browns. They were tight with the Colts. They lost to the Chargers and the Bengals. A lot of unforced errors. There are a lot of self-inflicted wounds that they have had in order to extend drives for the opposing offense, things like that. Don't allow this Chiefs team, whoever does come out there to play in Week 18, don't allow them to have those extra opportunities. You need to create those for yourself in this game. Want to see the Broncos run the ball well, obviously. Want to see the young guys step up. Chris, Bo Nix, he's already over 30. He's at 30 total touchdowns this season, which is kind of crazy considering where kind of projected he might be at the beginning of the season. Fascinating to see him join kind of the ranks of some of the NFL's best. But if the Broncos are somehow able to make the playoffs and then get a win in Buffalo, they would be the Chiefs' first opponent in the postseason. So it'd be fascinating storylines all over the place. And of course, always fun to get a chance to chat with you and preview the Chiefs. I know you're excited about the postseason, but it's going to be a just intense Week 18 of the NFL season. So, of course, we'll be watching and monitoring the games on Saturday, all day Sunday as well, to kind of figure out who is going to be where in the placement of the AFC and NFC, for that matter, playoff race. But Broncos Country, Chiefs Kingdom, we appreciate you so much for making us your first listen of the day every single day. And if for your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On NFL. A couple of great shows over there for you to consume as you digest all this football content while there is still football content going on with football games being played. We appreciate you so much. We'll catch you on the next one.